And you're good to go.
Perfect. Good day, good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for having me here. Before I get stuck into the fascinating world of skills mapping of your workforce and introducing myself, I'd like to start by telling you a story about Samantha, a young woman that I met and had the privilege of meeting last year, and she's generously allowed me to share her story. So Sam, who you can see here, is a former police officer with the UK Metropolitan Police. She was 24 when she was diagnosed with a neurological disorder that impacted her movement. One of the greatest impacts of Sam's disability was, of course, her employment. She could no longer perform the operational police officer role. So as you can imagine, for a young woman who had always been very active and who dreamed of being in the life of the service, it was a crushing realization. And Samantha was placed on a back office duties doing admin work, which wasn't that fulfilling and wasn't really using her full potential. So while she still had a job, she was being underutilized and felt undervalued. And so a sense of worth and happiness understandably plummeted during this time as well. So when With You With Me was first introduced to Samantha through one of our non-for-profit disability partners in the UK, who knew our mission was to solve underemployment, Samantha was a perfect example of someone who has potential to do more. Samantha had never worked outside of law enforcement, but she saw her potential to apply the same skills and expertise that she had honed through 8 years as being a cop to an entirely different context. And so we worked with Samantha to map out her skills and her aptitude, her personality style, and identify that she had high propensity to excel as a software developer. She had obviously never worked as a software development or even technology before, but she had the natural intelligence and abilities to learn the technical aspects of the role quickly, as well as leadership and life experience from her law enforcement days. Samantha did around 130 hours of self-paced online training that got her started, got her accreditation as a full stack Java developer. But that was only part of the solution. Like we could upskill hundreds, thousands of people in the Canadian economy, but it's not really going to solve it. We also needed to find an organization that was willing to look at people at skills-based hiring and skills-based talent mobility. And we found that with Northrop Grumman. And for those who don't know who Northrop Grumman is, they're a global aerospace technology company. And so for their part of the story, Northrop Grumman was facing a digital skills deficit. They just couldn't find the tech talent that they needed, which we can all relate to. They saw the skills or the potential skills that Samantha had, took a leap of faith by throwing out traditional recruitment requirements that they had for technologists, like degrees or years experience, and they placed her into the team as an entry-level development role. So Samantha's been with Northrop Grumman for just over a year, and she's promoted during the time. She's now a lead in the team of developers, and Northrop Grumman's now scaled out that project to hire a lot more people like Samantha. So no, while this story is focused on like a recruitment and diverse hiring based on potential rather than the benefits of skill-based talent management, I want to start with that because it's a great example of what an individual's hidden unexplored skills are potentially an organization's greatest untapped resource. So people often are often so much more capable of what their resume or job description says on it. And I've definitely seen that in the military veteran space or the indigenous refugee space. So we just have to acknowledge this, and operationalizing it is how we can solve a slew of workforce challenges, from filling skills gaps to reducing churn. And the idea of uncovering latent workforce talent isn't groundbreaking, nor is it a notion of transferable skills. So I guess I'll just pause there. But for the public service, you probably have tens of thousands of Samanthas. And so we'll just show you ways to make it easier to find them. So based on what's missing in a professional sense is that has been the framework that legitimizes the strategy for your organization. Sometimes you can trust and rely on, essentially the process of mapping skills, understanding an individual's potential, and then matching them to practical applications in the workplace. And of course, having a way to prove that the individual is indeed capable of delivering on the skills that we say that they have. Because that we have to do that. We have to prove it because that de-risks it all for an organization embarking on a skills-based employment. And that's what I'm going to delve in today. So a little bit about just a quick With You With Me myself. My name is Caleb Walker. I'm an executive leader at With You With Me. I served in the Canadian Army for 20 years, 3 tours to Afghanistan. I got drawn into With You With Me because of the social impact, and I've been with You With Me for 3 years. With You With Me is a social impact tech company. It's all about solving underemployment, which is when someone is employed but not really working at their full potential. And we see underemployment everywhere in society and in most workplaces. But most commonly, it's in the underrepresented communities and groups. Because of just barriers you typically see through the CV, years of experience, degrees, other aspects, people may not have been afforded the same opportunities to get a foot in the door. And we do a lot of work in particular with groups including neurodivergent individuals, indigenous communities, youth, refugees, and increasingly women in technology. And so we started off from trying to solve like a smaller problem, was like underemployment in the veteran space. As you can imagine, as a military veteran myself, I used to see former mates really struggle with their transition as they're often overlooked for roles. I actually just had a LinkedIn message from a buddy who has a master's degree. He can speak French, and he was overseas with me this morning, and he just told me that he's put out so many applications and nobody's having a look at him. And so they're often overlooked for roles in the corporate world because they just didn't have the right experience. Their CV bots often block these guys from even qualifying for an interview. And at the time, there was a significant demand for tech skills, which is, of course, what we're still seeing today. And we thought if we could make veterans technologists, then we could create a path for fulfilling lucrative and future-proof careers. And then we could do this for other people as well. How do we do that? We've created a tech platform that draws on a approach honed by the same approach that the country's biggest employer uses, the military. We decided if the military can use aptitude testing, skills mapping, and specialized training to get ordinary people to do extraordinary things, so too can other organizations. And so that's what our technology does. It tests everybody, it maps all the skills, it trains people, and then it deploys them as human assets to your organization. And our model was proven so effective in supporting diverse individuals into tech careers that we soon had demand to apply the same approach to organizations' internal workforces. So today we're aiming to solve underemployment at scale by helping employers uncover and mobilize untapped potential and skills in their own workforce, which brings me to the importance of skills-based talent management. So to understand why skills-based talent management is such a rapidly growing trend, we just need to look at the market. And so like skills mapping in itself, it kind of helps you answer the following question. Like, does everyone here think that they are spending the right training dollars on the right people at the right time with the right benefits? And how are they tracking that? And then hopefully by doing the skills mapping I'm going to be talking through, you can start to show the data if that is in fact true. It's important because as we've all heard, we've seen, we've lived it, there's a skills shortage, particularly when it comes to all important digital and tech skills, which are fast becoming the bedrock of majority of roles. And at the same time, we're facing a really tough economic environment, which means we can no longer just keep throwing money at the market to lure top talent. Budgets are constrained and many organizations have hiring freezes in place. But I don't think skill shortage is the only partially to blame. It may be an unpopular opinion, but I think most organizations aren't clear on what their genuine skills that they already have and what their digital needs really are and what abilities their workforce already possesses outside of their job descriptions, of course. And so this later point, it's really important, a really important one, as many employers don't realize that the capabilities that they're seeking in the market are often laying dormant within their own workforce without a clear understanding of where your organization currently stands and where you need it to be when it comes to workforce skills. It's almost impossible to accurately identify and fill critical voids, no matter the state of the labor market. And so this is where workforce skills mapping can be used by your organization to obtain an accurate view of your current capabilities, productivity, skills required, optimal performance, both now and in the future, and any gaps that need to be filled. So what exactly is a skills-based talent management? In a nutshell, it's an approach to human resource management that focuses on identifying, developing, and managing the skills and capabilities held by existing employees in an organization. In skills-based talent management, the focus is on specific skills and knowledge that employees possess and how they can be developed and utilized to meet the needs of the organization. It involves creating a comprehensive inventory of the skills and competencies that the employees already possess, as well as identifying the skills that are needed in the future success. So skills mapping identifies exactly which tasks and requirements are critical to both a role and an organization, and which employees can be underskilled or transferred to fill the critical capabilities. Having a comprehensive outline of the skills and the competencies required for employees to reach the next level means organizations can create a clear pathway for professional development and enable greater talent mobility. A well-executed skills mapping allows organizations to maintain a consistent measure of skills and competencies. It provides a framework for managing professional development, career progression, and promotion, and it helps level up your workforce and deliver positive impact by creating opportunities for those who may never have been considered. From a process perspective, in terms of how to reap the greatest benefits from skills-based talent management, I'm going to take you through the three key ideas, which is firstly, establish the skills framework, then exploring the workforce to find hidden potential and skills, and then finally bridging the gap between the skills and you have and the skills that you need in the future and then proving it through capstones. So first of all, establishing a skills framework. The popularity of a skills framework has exploded in recent times from a simple reason that many organizations have no consistent way to grade and measure their roles. In an IT department alone, there may be like 100+ job descriptions circulating that don't allow for progression, moving laterally, or real world accountability. So firstly, you need a universal way of grading, defining, and measuring roles. There are a number of skills mapping frameworks organizations can use to create standardized roles. A great place to start are digital roles, and as they're growing in demand and future-proof, and the process for understanding key competencies is simple. So that'll be the focus I'm going to talk about today. And actually, I'm going to hand it over to a partner, CIPS, with our CEO, Greg Lane.
Hello, and thank you. Yes, my name is Greg Lane, and I am with CIPS. And if you don't know CIPS, we're an organization that has been around for, as you can see, 65 years. And our primary focus is increasing the talent pool in Canada of professionals, and whatever that means. But we'll go through quickly because we want to save time at the end for questions. So next slide, Caleb. This is what I believe the way to grow the skill supply in Canada should be mapped out or illustrated, I guess. At the top of this is CSCAN, so the computer science faculties in all the different universities across the country are feeding people and resources into this supply, if you will. And at the bottom, from a stakeholder perspective, we have the CIOs who are largely responsible for hiring and or evaluating and or planning on what to do with talent. So the stakeholder community, in my mind, starts at academia and ends at employment. And our role through that entire process is to help people plan their career paths and plans. And also, to Caleb's point, looking for people who may not be in the industry today. So non-IT, immigration, and skills transfer. If you have a job, even in the company, and you want to move into IT, how can we help that happen? Let's keep going. We got a lot of material to go through. So right now, as Caleb talked about, we have a skills gap, not only in numbers, but in the nature of the skills that people have in the economy. And that's not forecast to get any better in the near term. So this isn't a problem that's going to solve itself. It's going to take a lot of effort from various stakeholders to find ways to increase the talent pool. Yep, keep going. Sorry, Caleb. So we, like Caleb, look for ways to help everyone, the stakeholder community, establish a common language. When we're talking about skills, what are we talking about? And not just for Canada, but for the world, and ideally translate it into multiple languages so people can help frame their skills in whatever language is most comfortable for them. So we've adopted the SFIA framework because it not only has a lot of definition for attributes. It also talks about level of responsibility. So you were on a team, but what role did you perform on a team? Were you following? Were you leading? Were you doing? So that for me is an overlay that makes it much more understandable around what your actual experience can represent in terms of potential. Let's take a look at what SFIA is. So here's the picture. Go ahead, Caleb. This is what SFIA is intending to help people understand. So this is a SFIA summary chart. This is SFIA 8. It's been around for over 20 years in an international community of volunteers, helps maintain it. It's owned by a foundation in Britain, but it's licensed to use it for everyone is available. It has 121 discrete skills at up to 7 levels in every skill. So the highlighted numbers on those different attributes are actually defined. And what you can do as a hiring manager, as a person, you can take the attributes that you want in any role and combine them at whatever level makes the most sense. So you can create anything, a digital transformation person, a cybersecurity person, a data science. You can create any role in technology based on these attributes. And when you create it, next slide, people will understand if you say, this is a digital forensic job at level 4, there's your description. If you match this, you are at level 4. If you have more, you're look up at the next one, level 5. So when you had that big picture of a highlighted block, that's the level of detail that you can find in every one of those blocks. So it takes the guesswork out. It takes the mystery out of what do I need to be at and how do I need to perform to be considered a DGFS level 4. And as a person that's managed people in my career, being able to have this kind of database conversation around here's the expectations for the role we have, here's where you're at, the map for how to go from where you are to where you need to be or want to be becomes increasingly simple, easier to deliver. Back to you, Caleb.
Thanks very much, Greg. I'm excited about SFIA because there's a great use cases of the Australian government. It's a real game changer approach. So even the Australian government has recently mapped out all the digital and tech roles to the framework that Greg was just talking about. And I won't go into too much of the detail, but if you're interested in learning more, there's a SFIA ebook you can download, and I've put a link in the screen for you. SFIA is by no means the only framework, but it is the best when it comes to tech and digital roles. And the fact that Australia, New Zealand, and the UK use it, it's a great way to enable talent mobility across the Five Eyes. And I'll share with
180 countries, Caleb.
Yeah, I was just picking the some of the big ones, but yes, 180 countries. And so what you can see just quickly on the screen here is essentially every public servant can go into onto the platform, work out exactly what role they're interested in, and it tells you the exact skills that you need for that role, and then also gives you a training plan to upskill to that role, and then how do you prove the proficiency so you can do that role. So it allows so much more mobility from typical roles that aren't, say, IT positions in the Canadian government. So AS positions and PM positions can move into those roles with a lot more flexibility. Leonardo did the same thing. It's a large military prime in Europe. It came to us wanting to creating a flexible workforce where talent could be easily moved across verticals in the business as and when needed. And they wanted their employees quick growing in a way where they could be ready to tackle the challenges of the future while benefiting from investment in upskilling and clear view of available career opportunities. So they also wanted to improve the accuracy of how they identify and fill the skills gaps. They had an issue where systems engineering, there was 63 different job descriptions, and they couldn't, by using job descriptions, they weren't able to work out how do they manage the different levels of systems engineers properly. And so by putting in a skills framework that was agreed on by the managers, they can now do professional development plans for each position that they have in that domain. We've been working with the Leonardo's head of learning and development in the UK to review their existing workforce framework, which features around 700 roles across a range of areas. And initially it was focused on 5 key areas: software engineering, systems engineering, electronics engineering, IT, and cybersecurity. And yeah, just as a context, systems engineering alone had 63 different job descriptions, which demonstrates the challenge when you're dealing with the in terms of a consistent approach. And so using SFIA, we were able to distill it down to just 40 skills at different levels required across all those roles. And so we can work out what the training would be for each one. It's a great part of that. All of these roles can be clearly mapped to SFIA competencies. So we're able to create a methodical, standardized way for business to assess which skills are required for each position and what additional skills an individual would need to learn or demonstrate to step up to the next level. Of an example of this practice, I've got here is an assessment and scoring for a software engineer. So Jason undertook SFIA assessment as well as WithYouWithMe broader assessment suite, which includes Big 5, DISC, and an aptitude test. And we can see a very clear picture of his skills match of what he already has for right now for his current role as a software engineer, as well as a path for him to be a senior software engineer. In tandem with building this framework, we've also assessed the skill set of Leonardo's existing staff in these departments, people like Jason, to have accurately identify what skills they have and where there actually are gaps, not just where there are blind spots or think they have a gap. Essentially, once we have the framework in place, it becomes a single source of truth for skills and competencies across all the digital roles, and a foundation on which the effective organization-wide training programs can be designed and implemented. The key thing I'd point out as well on this slide is that once we know what aptitudes and what skills that Jason can learn quickly, we can also make recommendations of jobs that he could do very quickly and with fast upskilling that you wouldn't even be thinking of. So the next step would be assessing the workforce to uncover hidden potential. There are a number of ways you can do it. Firstly, if you've mapped against SFIA, it's a relatively straightforward process to assess individuals in your organization against that framework. And this is generally a self-assessment which the manager can review. And depending on the detail and what you want to get within 15 to 30 minutes, you can get a really clear indication as to someone's skills for the role in relation to SFIA. The great thing about these assessments is that they provide insight into where an individual currently sits in the competency scale and make recommendations for training or support that may be required to move up to the next level, or even fill a capability gap that may exist for the current role that they're operating in. When you combine a skills assessment with the aptitude test to see what they can learn quickly, personality testing like DISC and the Big 5, you're also able to identify opportunities for someone to mobilize internally into an area role that may not have experience in it beforehand. So looping back to my earlier example, Leonardo, specifically to the system engineering and the IT department, we use our suite of assessments to baseline the top performing employees who are already in high demand in systems engineering roles. And this enabled us to create a profile of what skills, what aptitude, and what soft skills are ideally suited for these positions. The thinking here is that if we have the data that demonstrates the competencies and traits of the top performer in systems engineers, we can create this to identify others in the organization who may previously not have been considered for this kind of role. And this gives Leonardo options when we're looking at their workforce, and perhaps some departments that have been oversubscribed to be able to identify, upskill, and redeploy talent to keep the employees in their talent ecosystem. How do we prove these competencies? We use typically capstones and like boot camps that show that the person can do the job using a business problem from the company. There's another organization that we worked with, Capita, which is a great example of the benefits of the approach as well. Capita recently worked with us to test around 2,000 people in their call center, which is typically a very transient position with a high attrition rates. Their real problem with it is they have a real problem with it actually, with 43% of their call center staff typically leaving within the first 6 months, which is a huge cost considering the time to onboard and that they don't become profitable until 6 months. And so the idea here is that Capita could identify the individuals in the call center who are already onboarded and are familiar with the organization, the process. They can identify those who have the propensity to quickly learn tech skills be mobilized and promoted into other areas of business. And we've been upskilling these individuals to SFIA level 3, which is still entry level, but across data, cyber, project management roles within Capita. And so essentially now, as part of the onboarding, Capita can test their call center staff in these entry-level admin roles, provide them with options for career progression, and provide them with a training plan that can have them progress into a new role. And they do this training as part of their PDP over the first 6 months of the role, making the call center essentially a farm of tech talent for the rest of the business. The process, including the industry certified training that makes them proficient in the digital role, is under $1,000. So while it doesn't solve the issue of people leaving the call center per se, it does help them solve their skills gap. It fills the IT roles for under $1,000. It helps reduce the churn. And so with this program, which has been executed in the last 6 months, we've just reduced their call center churn for over 20%. And lastly, Fujitsu in Australia is another organization that's been doing quite well. They've been using the platform to find hidden talent, and it's increased the rise in internal hires by 50%, which obviously improves the retention of their own staff, but then also staff engagement and as well. The last thing we do is mapping the skills for organization needs in the future, but doesn't have yet. I'll share with you a final point that I think is really exciting about the frontier of this space, which is being able to use the insights from this approach to not only understand and optimize your current workforce, but then to help build out a future workforce too, by identifying the changing skills you're going to need down the track. Best way to explain this concept is through another story. This project we did with the Australian Army is to show the impact that evolving technologies would have on the Army's traditional jobs and how they would need to augment their workforce to meet these needs. And so we worked with a great company called Fathom AI that applies machine learning to billions of data points to surface insights on how dynamic forces such as new work models, economic disruption, and AI will be reshaping the world of work. And working with them, we examined both the impact of automation and augmentation into the Army's workplace over the next 15 years and investigated how this would change the people's landscape. And this piece of research was about focusing on the people, the humans, rather than the systems and process. And so when speaking about automation here, we're talking about the ability for technology to fully replace a job or significant components of the job. And that would mean that the job has been altered significantly or have the individual redeployed, essentially replaced by technology. It's important to note that this is more and more often the replacement of components of a job and not the entire job itself. And it's most often seen in a process where they're highly repetitive and predictable. A great example of automation would be the payroll function. And for the Australian Army, as an example, like 60% of the payroll function was going to be automated over the next 10 years. But for the Australian Army, that was a bad thing because the majority of their diversity, particularly women in the Australian Army, were in that domain. So they don't want to get rid of those and let those people leave the Army and like get rid of those jobs. And so instead they found skills that they needed, which was actually data engineering and data analytics. And they confirmed that that workforce had the potential to learn those skills quite easily. And they just redeployed a lot of those people into those jobs, about 10% every year. And so that's what those kind of insights will be able to do with the right kind of focus. So yeah, really invaluable insights is when it comes to workforce planning, where there are two key takeaways. When thinking about skills mapping and workforce changes. Firstly, the addition of new jobs to build, implement technologies as they change and occur. And secondly, the addition of new skills to existing jobs for people to learn and implement the technologies over time. So armed with this insight and a skills framework to define the roles and skills and a picture of the employees that includes their aptitude and their personality, the Army is in a great position to guide their future workforce strategy. And given the recruitment and retention challenges also faced by defense, growing existing talent through training is the best path forward to meet the changes coming down from the digital world. So I know I've covered a lot of content and stories today, and there's a few resources I've mentioned that popped up on the screen, which you can access by scanning the QR code. And so I thanks everyone for listening today, and I'll answer a few questions. And thanks very much for Greg and CIPS for participating with me today and giving the perspective about SFIA. Does SFIA recommend or provide specific training courses to get skills at various levels? So SFIA doesn't actually recommend the training for you. What you would do is you would audit, if you already have your own internal training, what you would do is you would audit the training to confirm what would give certain skills, and then give that as a blueprint for your workforce so that they would know what courses that they should be doing. And so if you do it quite well, what we try and do is work out the fastest way to proficiency. And so we would try and find what courses or what part of courses will give you the skills that you need to prove that proficiency so you can do the job as fast as possible.
Yeah, I can add to that answer too. So another part of the answer is depending on what tool you use to map and assess your capabilities, some of those tools have included courseware references for specific attributes and skill sets. So Skills TX is the tool that we at CIPS use and the one that Caleb uses as well. And they have spent time with CompTIA and other sources. And I mentioned working with the CS community. We're also working with academia in Canada to identify courses that can help bridge gaps. So there's a number of different answers to that question. So either we did too good a job and there's no questions left, or people are being a little shy. So happy to answer any questions about what we're doing in Canada. Happy to answer what's happening in the international community in some of this as well, because CIPS is a part of IFIT, the UNESCO body that's associated with the international IT community. So
yeah, I guess I apologize. I tried to go relatively fast so that we could enable as many questions as possible, but in hindsight, I could have went slower. But I guess if there's no questions until there are, I'll quickly just share the screen and I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about for how do you look at people based on either the skills they already have or their potential to learn skills. So say for Erica, if we can capture her skills based on SFIA, of what she already has and what levels she has. But then we have the aptitude testing that's able to match out what aptitudes that she has, like to learn skills. So she will be able to look at her culture fit, psychometric assessment, aptitude, learning style, and this gives her career matches. So if Erica's never really been in technology before, not something she ever really thought about, which there is a gender gap in technology roles, and so this would be helping her find a pathway for what would make sense for her. And so like the big five is important. We found this is important when we had veterans transition into tech roles, is we'd give them the skills, but then they wouldn't really have the personality for it. As in, they would upskill in Java and technology, computer programming roles that really kind of need a bit of a higher conscientiousness, and we'd be putting people in that have a low conscientiousness, and it wouldn't be a good fit. We'd be putting people into roles where they're project managers. They need to kind of coordinate across different organizations, and they just wouldn't have the right level of extroversion to be successful. So this is a way that we just kind of have that conversation to see, not only skills, but then what kind of personalities do you have to make a good fit. We had then do an aptitude test to see what aptitudes you have to learn skills quickly. And so once they've done this test once, your aptitude doesn't typically, your personality can change quite a lot, but your aptitudes don't typically change very much. And so by doing the aptitude test once, you can basically match to skills, which then matches you to any job. And so if skills change in a job, then you'll just be rematched to that new opportunity. And then this gives you top career matches: content writer, junior visual communications designer, etc. And so, so for Erica, she can actually be matched based on her aptitude or the skills that she already has. She can see what she would have the best fit to either fill quickly or successfully, because she has the aptitude to be quite good in that domain. So cyber admin, as Greg was saying, is broken down into, say, 4 skills. And so she has the aptitude to learn those skills at these levels, which means that she might be a good fit. So either she can apply for that job, even though she doesn't have experience for that, or she can just do upskilling to get more comfortable with it. And then to kind of answer that question, then you would have like scoped training, so that way you can learn to the skills as fast as possible in that domain. And then how is this useful for, say, like a government department or for a large organization? Then they can start to look for the trapped capacity in their organization. So we're working with about 7 different federal departments: D&D, RCMP, Health Canada, Infrastructure Canada, Shared Services Canada, to try and work out where the trapped capacity is in their own organization. Is there any AS positions that actually are well matched to be a data analyst? And even though Kevin here hasn't done any of the training, he has an aptitude to learn that training quite quickly. And so then you just put him on a short list, do an initial interview, and then he can upskill to do that role. And so as the workforce gets needing more and more flexibility, having to upskill more and more in the future, the ability to find individuals or to build out projects and teams will be more and more important. And if you have the skills framework underpinning it, then you can start to move around talent quicker. And so say you wanted to build up a DevOps project in your organization, you could have a bit of information about the DevOps project, what dates that you're hoping to do, and then you would break down all the roles that you're looking for that. And then you'll be looking for the skills that you need in each role. And then you can add skills or delete skills based on the skills framework that you think would be important. And then you'd weight the importance of those skills, so that way the right people will be matched to the role. And then if you get some time, if you have a few months of lead time, then you can upskill those people to be ready for that role and fill that job. So yeah, I think I thought it would be important to, how does that work in practice? That's how it would work in practice. And an example, in a Canadian example, is all the different departments we're working with. But I think in the Canadian military, for example, they have a lot of part-time reservists, infantry, armored artillery soldiers that actually have the potential to learn cyber roles quite quickly. And so you're able to move that talent quickly into those new roles and find all the trapped capacity. And so you could do that with that enables you to bring in more skilled talent and also move around skilled talent as well.
I just want to pick up on that, because one of the things that we find from an association perspective is it allows conversations around career choices, not just job choices. So to Caleb's point, once you have established an aptitude profile and a skill profile, your choices around career and making career decisions are more informed and likely have a better outcome. So there's a question here. Wonderful presentation, thank you. Are there any limitations of using this process? I don't even know if I understand the question, Jay. Can you expand on the question in terms of limitations? My belief is the limitation is adoption. Until more people becomes a common practice, it does limit a little bit, but that's just like anything. It's, it needs to have more people using it, like any language or any framework. And once more and more people use it, which we're starting to see happen, then limitations, I don't think, are going to become an issue. I don't know, Caleb, if you have a different answer, but.
Well, I would say what some people have been trying to do. Oh, there we go. Is that they'll try and, like, there's a difference between organizational skills and team skills. and like the broader skills, and then like the individual skills. And so when you're trying to do it for a really large organization of 7,500 people, you want to have like precision and detail for the individual, but then you want to have like broad for like the organization. And so what you just want to try and not do is like use like too much detail at the top level and too broad at the individual level. And so you just have to be pretty deliberate on what you're trying to accomplish. And so it's actually done in a more of a consultative way. You wouldn't just dump skills onto an organization, and kind of, you would do it in a consultative with the team managers, and they would kind of say, actually, you know what, that's not really the skills that we need here. We need this. And then you would make sure that it actually makes sense for, so you would give like the 90%, 80% solution, but then there'd be some discussion on how this would best help out your organization. If you create too many skills, like typically you would only do, say, 5 to 7 skills per job, because if you put too many skills in there, it becomes overly complex, and there's no focus. But then again, you also want to make sure you have enough details to enable the right outcomes. So like, that would be not really a limitation of it. It's just something to be careful for, is just making sure that you have the right kind of consultation with everybody. You would also want to so the skills give you the skills, but then you would also need to understand like languages and tools. And so you could be like a data analyst level 3 with Power BI, but if you wanted to do visualization of Tableau, then in an organization, like I know for like Esri, for example, they do that in Australia. They have a skills framework, SFIA, and they put in tools as well that you need to know for that skill level. So you need that skill level, but then you need that tool, and that allows you to get like a little bit more of the detail that you might need for that project or that job. So yeah, but then you would just shift based on the tools required.
And in the Skills TX tool that we're offering our members, there's 600 role profiles. So you can look at a role in different ways. You can ask for the best fit, which will give you to 2 decimal places. So Caleb's a 78.37% fit with data architect, and it tells you where you fit and where the gaps are. So that means you have, as an individual, you have an opportunity to say, do I want to work in those courses and get that training or education? Or do I want to look for other jobs? So you can look for best fit, or you can pick roles and see what your fit is, and then make decisions based on what makes the most sense for you, depending on where you are and where you want to go.
I do want to answer that second question actually from Jay. What's the key lessons learned from possible failures and mixed matches of jobs and applicants? So what we've typically seen is that like everyone's busy, and so like the IT manager or the manager will be said, hey, put it together a job description. So they'll put something together using a template or whatever time that they have, and they'll flip it over to the recruiting, like the HR manager, and then the HR manager will flip that over to the recruiting manager. And then there's usually like quite a large disconnect between whatever that job description was, kind of play the game of telephone, to actually what is being looked for on the market. And it might be created by the fact that the manager doesn't have enough time to put together this wordy job description, or maybe the HR manager had to use like, kind of like just job descriptions that they have, or the recruiting manager kind of might have made up a job description. And so that's when you see like a huge mismatch of like what skills they're actually required. And so the way for this to work best actually is if a team is going to be putting together a new capability where they need new skills, is to actually talk to the team and to the manager directly and map out exactly like what is the job that they're going to be doing, and not just like the job description that they always use when they go to market, is like what tools, what skills, what's the outcomes of this, and then from there you can work out the exact skills that you require, which makes it easier for everybody. And then you can even map out like a skills, like an upskilling plan to get there. And so that would be just kind of answering that other question there. That's when it's been interesting is like, you know, like, so as an organization, we work with a lot of say recruiting managers to get diverse candidates into the job, and we'll talk to them and they say, well, here's a job description, and we're like, that job description doesn't really make any sense, or okay, that's weird. But then we'll ask to talk to the actual manager that we'll be working with it, or the team that we'll be working with them, and there's a huge disconnect just because of the game of telephone of job descriptions, and we're like, oh, what skills do you actually need? And then they'll lay it out to be relatively focused, or to solve their problem, and it's a lot easier to fill that role up. So it just creates a bit more like focus and a bit easier ability to fill a role than like a broader job description.
Maybe just one last thing on SFIA. When I talk about 7 levels, or we showed you 7 levels, the progression there is knowledge is the first 1 or 2 levels because you learn in university, or you take a course, or you acquire knowledge. Then you develop a skill because you apply that knowledge in a work environment. So you're moving up into levels 3, 4. And then once you're in a senior role or senior capacity, you're deemed as competent or proficient. That's when you see level 5, 6, and 7. And so you can map and see how to gain or improve your level in any category or any attribute. And it's a logical progression, right? You start with knowledge, you gain skill, and you become proficient. Well, maybe we should just thank people for the
Yeah.
for their questions and their participation, and it's much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's you know, when we started a few years ago, skills-based hiring in Canada, like, it was a pretty tough sell, and a lot of pushback on its possibilities. But we're slowly seeing it being agreed to more and more in the North American market. And even now you see in LinkedIn as a company is pushing a lot of skills over experience, or skills over degrees, which, I mean, I don't think it's anything over. I think that like both of them have different value, but I think as the world gets more complicated and the job market gets a little more complicated, having a skills framework to help out with talent mobility and really identifying what you need will help you a lot more. So, you know, just hopefully if you leave this conversation like considering using skills frameworks more and doing the research on it, I highly recommend reaching out to either CIPS, Greg, the association that's already adopted it, or ourselves, and we can show you some more use cases or point you in the right direction. Thanks very much for your time.